It was the last month of the year when I turned 20. Everyone around me was excited and happy, celebrating Christmas and welcoming the new year. Well, except for me. I just broke up with my boyfriend of 6 years. So, while everyone else was in joyous, festive spirits, I ended up spending the time with my close friends at a Christmas party filled with anger and tears. How could he do this to me after all these years of being together? My friend Jenny tried to comfort me and said,
"Don't worry. As a celebration of you being single again, I'll set you up on blind dates one after another, nonstop."
Another friend of mine, Michelle, chimed in.
Hey, stop talking. What are you going to do now? Are we going back home or continuing to stay outside the whole night?
Feeling depressed, I didn't want to go back home. At the same time, feeling liberated, I yelled, "Let's spend the whole night outside." But we needed a place to stay. Determined to extend the night, we scoured nearby motels, only to find each one fully booked due to the bustling holiday season. Suddenly, I remembered a motel I used to pass by before. Wasn't there a motel at the end of that market alley? I called right away. "Hello? Do you happen to have a vacant room?"
Yes.
"Great, I would like to." The lady on the phone abruptly hung up. I found her manner a tad rude, but her yes got us excited. We grabbed some alcohol drinks and snacks from a nearby convenience store and headed to the motel we'd just called. At the reception, I asked, "There are 3 of us. Do you have a room a bit larger?" The lady glanced at us briefly, hesitated while holding the key, as if debating whether to give us a key or not. Eventually, without saying much, she handed us a key and said it's on the 5th floor. Her demeanor felt excessively reserved, almost bordering on rudeness. It made sense why they had vacancies while other motels were fully booked. I mean, who would want to come back here again? I thought to myself. When the elevator arrived on the 5th floor and the doors opened, a long corridor appeared through the dim lighting. Quietly finding our way to the room, I could hear the giggles of a woman's laughter mingling with the hushed sounds of other guests chatting. As I followed my friends, casually assuming it must be the normal chatter of other guests, suddenly, I felt a shiver down my spine at the back of my head and neck. In moments like these, you don't want to look back. Instead, I cautiously glanced around left and right. However, upon hearing the sound of a door opening, my body reflexively turned. The door of the room we had just passed was slightly ajar. Oh, the guest must be about to come out of the room, I thought with relief. In that instant, we had already reached the front of our room. Our room was at the end of the 5th floor corridor. Upon entering, the room gave off a slightly old-fashioned vibe with only one bed. However, it was cleaner and better than expected. We immediately took out the drinks and snacks we just bought and began continuing our private party. Time flew by, and before I knew it, it was well past 2 in the morning. Despite our initial plan to stay up all night partying and drinking, we eventually succumbed to the overwhelming tiredness and became sleepy. After hastily tidying up the mess, the 3 of us squeezed into the bed, falling asleep side by side. I woke up abruptly to a sharp scream, and when I opened my eyes, I saw my friend Jenny, who had been sleeping next to me, had opened the door and rushed out. Still groggy from sleep and affected by the lingering alcohol, I yelled, "Close the door behind you," without really understanding what was happening. I tried to go back to sleep, but then I realized that Michelle, who should have been lying next to me, was not there. With Jenny having just left and Michelle nowhere to be seen, I wondered if I was alone in the room. Feeling a bit uneasy being alone in the dark and unfamiliar place, I immediately called my friends. The bell rang, and when I looked, there were 2 phones side by side at the head of the bed. Are they playing pranks on me? Hastily, I dressed and hurried downstairs. Upon reaching the 1st floor lobby, I found both Jenny and Michelle standing together in front of the counter. I complained, "If you're coming down here, at least say something. Why didn't you say anything?" But my friends were acting strangely. They weren't even listening to me. Instead, it seemed like their eyes were focused on something behind me. As I approached closer, I noticed they were trembling all over. What's even stranger is that next to them, a lady who came around from behind the counter. "What's going on? What happened?" I asked the lady. "What happened to my friends? What's wrong with them?" The lady, out of the blue, asked me,
How about you, Miss? You are okay, right?
"Yes, I'm okay, but what's going on here?" Suddenly, the lady went back behind the counter and said bluntly,
I'll refund the money. Please empty the room now.
"What's going on? Where are we supposed to go in the middle of the night?" However, the lady demanded that we leave quickly. As she insisted, and with my friends trembling, it left me no choice but to leave the motel. I packed up my friends' belongings and escorted them outside, using the refunded money to send them off one by one in taxicabs. I said goodbye and told them to call me once they arrived to ensure their safe return home. And finally, as I awaited for my own taxicab alone, sudden laughter echoed in my ears, the same laughter I'd heard in the motel hallway earlier. I was so startled that I quickly turned to glance back at the motel. Despite the distance, the laughter felt unnervingly close. In an instant, chills ran through my whole body, and the unsettling thought crossed my mind that whatever it wasn't from a real person. In the midst of intense horror, my heart thudded as if it were about to explode. At that moment in the distance, I saw a taxicab approaching with its headlights on, and from the moment I got into the cab, the laughter mysteriously stopped. The tension eased when I got home, and the feeling of alcohol hit me again. Without even changing my clothes, I collapsed onto my bed. But just as I was drifting in and out of sleep, that eerie laughter started echoing again. I tried to get up, but I couldn't move, not even a finger. While struggling to move, I saw someone standing and laughing. That laughter. It was from this woman all along. Laughing, she glanced in my direction, but her face I do not recognize. Suddenly, the laughing woman started coughing in agony, spewing something from her mouth and vomiting. She gradually approached me, still coughing and vomiting. I was so terrified that I tightly closed my eyes, cold sweat streaming down my whole body. At that moment, I suddenly heard these words in my ear.
Water. Give me water.
A moment later, everything became quiet. The feeling of her presence disappeared, and when I cautiously opened my eyes, that woman was already here, standing on my bed. As if unable to hold back any longer, she began to vomit onto my face. And what came out of her mouth was nothing but dark red, bloody clumps of flesh.
Do you know what time it is now? Why did you crawl back in at this time of night? Don't you know how dangerous it is to be outside in the middle of the night?
Thanks to Mom, I escaped from a nightmare where I couldn't tell if it was reality or not. It's been a long time since Mom's presence felt so warm and comforting. Then my phone rang. It was a call from Jenny. She is afraid to go to sleep because she might see that woman in her dream. I asked, "What woman?"
The woman we saw at the motel earlier. You mean you didn't see that woman from the motel? How come only Michelle and I saw her, but not you?
What on earth happened? Why did you two run out like that? Jenny's description of this woman was exactly the same as what I had seen. Walking around the room, incoherent, talking, gasping, and vomiting. All three of us saw the same mysterious woman. The only difference is that my friends saw her first at the motel while I saw her at my own home. Now, only now, do I begin to understand the events that occurred at the motel and those I experienced at home. I didn't know who to share about this. Mom would probably say it's because I drank too much and got drunk. I didn't want to have another nightmare. Besides, it wasn't only me who saw her, but all three of us. Setting aside my pride and everything else, I reached out to my ex-boyfriend. His uncle is a shaman, and I hoped he might have some insight into what was going on. The shaman told me to bring all my friends who were involved. He insisted that he wouldn't take any money for services and strongly urged us to come. So, with my friends, I went to visit my ex-boyfriend's uncle. He began with the familiar rituals that I've seen on TV. A few seconds later, he began to cough and complained of severe pain in his throat, saying it hurts too much.
My throat hurts. What the heck did she swallow? What did she ingest?
At the scene, all three of us were shocked. Ever since we got out of that motel, we also experienced some pain and coughing, although not as severe. Now, this shaman replicates what the woman we have seen. We all got chills, realizing all of this has to do with the woman we saw. But that wasn't the end. The shaman, with a husky voice from constant coughing, said,
Do you realize what kind of horrible thing you have brought with you?
What? What did we bring?
You already know. You just said all three of you have seen it. It was the ghost of a woman who died from suicide, probably from drinking poison. I could literally feel it. My throat is still burning.
Was the woman we saw the ghost of someone who died in that motel? What truly happened there remains a mystery, leaving many unanswered questions in my mind.